I loved Point Break. It was an action-packed adrenaline thrill ride containing charismatic characters. I'm talking about the original 1991 Point Break, not this piece of shit remake. Oh, you're gonna pay. Oh, you're gonna pay. Ugh. Hey there guys, how are you? I'm wearing a shirt with my own face on it. Link to this shirt down below if you want a closer look. Anyway, how are you guys doing? And by the way, my top 10 best and worst of the year are coming right after I get done with this review, because I had to get this out of the way before I talked about my top 10 best and worst movies of the year. This was just one of those little things eating away at me, and it took 2 weeks for me to finally collect my thoughts on this shitty Point Break remake. That way I could push record on the camera and talk about it with you guys. Okay, here we go. Point Break, the remake. Where do I even start with this? I first need to say this. The original Point Break, it's honestly in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, because when it comes to action movies, this movie does everything right. This movie and T2 Judgment Day define what 1990s action movies are supposed to be. And first things first, I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. I only hate the remake because it's a remake of one of my favorite movies of all time. That's not the case whatsoever. When they first announced this movie years ago, I was excited about it. Now, did I expect it to be better than the original? No, but I was hoping for a really cool heist movie with charismatic characters, some camaraderie, and just kind of reliving some of those same vibes that the original gave me. That's all I wanted to see from this remake, so I didn't hold this remake to that high of a standard. I just hoped that they would try. And when it comes to this lackluster remake of Point Break, well, this image right here of Gary Busey explains how I feel. I first have to talk about the original just for a few seconds before we dive into this atrocious pile of shit remake. And when it comes to the original Point Break, there's so many elements that blend together to make the perfect badass action movie. And when it comes to making good action films, you need more than just memorable, really cool action sequences. You also need good characters that are charismatic, likable, and memorable, and well written. Just take this line right here, given from the character of Bodhi in the original Point Break.
This was never about money for us. It was about us against the system. That system that kills the human spirit. We stand for something. To those dead souls inching along the freeways in their metal coffins, we show them that the human spirit is still alive.
Patrick Swayze for life. And I live my life by that line that Bodhi gives. Alright, so a few quick things about the original Point Break. It was a rated R, gritty, badass action heist film with the ex-presidents who were also surfers who just wanted to live an endless summer. And how could they do that? Well, they had to fund that by robbing banks. And the thing about Point Break was it had Johnny Utah and it had the character of Bodhi. Two guys from the opposite sides of a spectrum, but when they came together and they had the spiritual side of surfing, they understood each other. Though one was a lawman and the other one was a criminal who just wanted to surf all day long, you understood both of them and you liked both of them, and as a viewer, you could resonate with each one. And that was the awesome thing about Point Break. You liked the antagonist and you liked the protagonist, and sometimes you could agree with both of them. So that's why I like the original Point Break so much. So take everything I just said, okay, and flush it down the fucking toilet. Bye-bye! And then you get the Point Break remake. Yeah, it's shit.
3 crimes, 3 continents. I think they're connected. They're attempting something called the Ozaki 8, a series of 8 ordeals that honor the forces of nature.
So this is about enlightenment?
Exactly.
Now, based on the plot of the movie, it shouldn't have been called Point Break. It should have been called the Ozaki 8, because essentially that's what this movie is about. Now, one of the main characters in this film is Bodhi, but this time around, Bodhi isn't this spiritual, really awesome, down-to-earth guy that the audience can resonate with and understand his motivations as a character. No, he's just this weird guy that doesn't really have a personality. He's very dull, very bland, and you kind of think he's an asshole along the way because some of his motivations and things that he wants to do simply don't add up. And the main objective of Bodhi and his crew in this film is to complete the Ozaki 8, and some of those elements of the Ozaki 8 include committing crimes. But sometimes during the Ozaki 8, they just do random shit like go snowboarding for 25 minutes in the movie or climb a cliff. And those don't relate to crimes or heists in any way, and I thought that was a little bit lazy, because if you just reworked the script to make those things turn into some kind of criminal activity where you had to complete a heist or rob something to complete those tasks, it would have made for a better movie. But no, they just want to go fucking snowboarding for 25 minutes in the movie. Now, before we continue on with the negatives, I do have one positive thing to say about this movie, and it's kind of regarding the Ozaki 8. I do like the wingsuit flying sequence. Now that was really cool. They actually did do that. They had real stuntmen do the wingsuit flying thing down a canyon and a mountaintop, and that's just phenomenal to me. That blows me away that humans can do things like that, and I thought that was the best 10 minutes of the movie. Now, did it really factor into anything else in the movie? No. Did they commit a crime while doing that? No, but I understood it because in this movie, it is a remake of the original, and it was kind of remaking that first skydiving scene in the original where Johnny Utah skydives for the first time. So it was about camaraderie. But the problem here is everything just gets washed over so quickly that you don't really feel that camaraderie between Johnny Utah and Bodhi in this movie. You never feel that connection. The best way I can describe the new Point Break remake is it almost feels like a GoPro camera demo reel. Yeah, you have all these action sequences, and then they're tied together by these really shitty acting scenes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch a GoPro demo reel. Tell me that doesn't look like Point Break. Now let's talk about one of the worst performances I've seen all year, and that was the shitty interpretation of Johnny Utah in this movie, played by some guy I don't even give a shit what his name is. Now, Johnny Utah in this movie, his name's actually not even Johnny Utah. It's actually a nickname, but for the sake of not giving a shit about this movie, I'm going to refer to him as Johnny Utah. Now, he's almost like a mannequin in this movie, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, Keanu Reeves as the original Johnny Utah was kind of a little bit stilted and was a little bit bland and didn't have much range as an actor. But the thing about Keanu Reeves is he's charismatic and likable. The guy doesn't have a lot of range, but what he gives you, it works. And he was made for the role of Johnny Utah. This new Johnny Utah, every time he's on screen, I was like, that guy just looks like a poser piece of shit asshole with some shitty tribal tattoos trying too hard. And much like Bodhi in this film, Johnny Utah has no redeeming qualities. He's an egotistical asshole who gets people killed. He's almost worse than the character of Bodhi in this film. And I just didn't like either characters. Neither one really connected with me. And the worst thing about this movie is they're supposed to have this camaraderie with each other. That's the whole thing about Point Break. And they just never really have that. Yeah, they kind of talk a little bit, and the movie tries to force it on you. But like I said, everything in this movie, there's scenes that just don't really add up, and everything gets washed over so quickly that it doesn't lead to anything else. And also in the Point Break remake, you have the character of Pappas returning once again, played by actor Ray Winstone. This guy's a great actor. He can give good performances. But not in this movie. Now, in the original Point Break, the character of Pappas was played by Gary Busey. Gary fucking Busey. And this guy was great as Pappas. I liked him, and he kind of felt like a washed-up detective, but he had this theory about who the ex-presidents were, and that's what got Johnny Utah on the trail. But in this remake, the character of Pappas, he offers almost nothing. He has no theory about who these guys are. It's all Johnny Utah. Pappas really just doesn't do much. He's in a few scenes, but he adds nothing to the movie whatsoever. Now, very quickly, let's cover a few other things. In this movie, the whole FBI thing behind Johnny Utah just takes a back seat. It's almost like the FBI in this movie doesn't exist. In the original, that was a big deal. They were on the task of trying to take down the ex-presidents. In this movie, it almost just feels like some blonde dude wants to hang out with guys that are cooler than him to do random shit. That's all it feels like. Fuck! But my biggest gripe with this movie, I'm gonna calm down just for a second before my head explodes. My biggest gripe with this film is it does try to recreate some of the famous scenes from the original Point Break. And fuck, they do such a half-ass job at doing so. Like these recreated scenes that are really big moments in the original movie that they try to shove into this new movie, they just kind of happen in the worst way possible with no creativity, no originality, no build-up to them. It's just like, yeah, that was in the original, but you just did a really shitty impression of it. And it doesn't even make sense why you're doing it. So here are my final flicking thoughts on the Point Break remake. It was never about the money, man. It was about us against the system, showing that the human spirit is still alive. But this movie, nah, it is about the money, and it's about making shitty remakes that are cash grabs. That's all this movie is. It is a fluffy PG-13 remake that takes no risks, offers no originality, and it's just a shitty movie. I could honestly talk for 35 minutes about how bad the last 10 minutes of this movie is, and how bad the green screen effects were, and how all character logic and motivations just went out the window, and it was just poorly written and executed, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do this. Yeah. I'm going to give the Point Break remake an F for fuck this movie. Okay guys, so that's my take on the Point Break remake. It's safe to say I hated this movie, and it will be in my top 10 worst of the year, so look out for that, and look out for the best of the year. So those videos should be up in a couple days. Now here's my question to you guys, and leave it down below. What do you guys think about this Point Break remake? Or what are some of your favorite 1990s action films? Yeah, give me your top 5. Leave it down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.